Every time I hear someone say Gen Z is the laziest generation, I can't help but think, haven't we heard this before? Didn't boomers say that about us Xers back in the day? The irony of it all is, the truth is, every new generation gets this lovely label thrown on them. And Gen Z, you are no exception. So let's get this out of the way. Is Gen Z lazy? Well, that does depend on how you define lazy, doesn't it? If lazy means they're not working themselves into an early grave for a boss who doesn't care about them, then yeah, maybe. But is that really lazy? Or could we call it smart? This deserves a little unpacking, because I think this idea deserves a little more than just some finger pointing and the back in my day we worked harder speech. It was maybe, just maybe, we're kind of looking at it wrong. First off, we have to understand this accusation. So let's talk about where this comes from. Why is Gen Z the supposed poster child for laziness? Well, the usual complaints go something like this. They're always on their phones. They don't want to work a real job. They expect everything handed to them. Sound familiar? It's the same stuff older generations said about us back when cable TV was still the cutting edge technology. And here's the kicker. The things that make people roll their eyes about Gen Z, most of them are simply byproducts of the world that we built. They grew up with the smartphones and social media because that's the world we handed to them. And now we're going to blame them for using it to their advantage. Come on, is that really right? Or is that just that generational gap? But I get it. There's some truth to the stereotype, or at least, there's definitely some basis for it. Okay, people see Gen Z entering the workforce and think they don't want to put in the same long hours we did. They're quitting jobs over mental health issues. They expect more flexibility, and that rubs a lot of people the wrong way, because the old way of thinking says work is supposed to be hard. But here's the thing. What some call lazy, others might call redefining priorities. So I'm going to flip the script on this a bit and put in a little defense for Gen Z. Maybe Gen Z isn't lazy at all. Maybe they're just evolving. Like they've seen the hamster wheel we've been on for decades and they've said, nah, no thanks, we're good. And really, can you blame them? Mental health days, work-life balance, refusing to live for the grind. It's not laziness. It's knowing when enough is enough. And honestly, isn't that something we could all learn from? They projected this idea that you have to suffer through life just to make a living. Plus, they're not just sitting around doing nothing. They've mastered the art of technologies in ways that leave the rest of us scratching our heads. Honestly. It might look like they're just glued to their screens 24/7, but they're out there creating content, running businesses, networking in ways that we never could have dreamed of. Back in the day, if you wanted to make a name for yourself, you had to start at the bottom, pay your dues, climb the ladder. But Gen Z, they're like, corporate ladder, screw that shit. We're just going to build our own tower on YouTube and call it a day. Is that lazy or is it genius? And we're always comparing generational challenges, but let's be real here for a minute. Gen Z is facing challenges that make some of the stuff that we dealt with look like a walk in the park. When we were coming up, we weren't saddled with the insane student loan debt that they are now, or the skyrocketing rents, or the fact that the job market seems to be one giant game of musical chairs. There's no loyalty to employees, and employees have no loyalty to companies. But think about it. A lot of Gen Z are graduating college and stepping into a world where a full-time job doesn't guarantee that you can afford an apartment or the basics in life. We gripe about how they don't want to work hard, but maybe they are looking at the same system we worked under and they're saying, yeah, it's broken. And we're not doing that. And I think here's the kicker. They're not wrong. They have watched us scramble around in this rat race for decades, jobs that didn't care about us, hustling till we burned ourselves out, watching the cost of living go up while the wages stayed frozen through the 90s. So can you really blame them for wanting something different? And another thing, Gen Z is redefining success. It's not about climbing a corporate ladder anymore or being tied to one job for 40 years anymore. They've got side gigs, starting their own business. They're monetizing things we never would have thought to. Like take streaming video games or becoming social media influencers. Sure, to some that might not look like a real work. Hey, if I could have made money talking to a camera while sitting in my pajamas instead of commuting to work all the time or busting my ass on construction sites, sign me up. And a big one now is media's role in shaping this narrative. I mean, let's talk about the role of media in all this. I mean, the media loves a good generational battle, pitting boomers, Gen X, millennials, and Gen Zs against each other all the time. I mean, that's TV gold right there. And for some reason, they've latched onto the narrative that Gen Z is lazy and entitled. But why? Is it because it sells? I mean, stories about how kids these days are ruining everything always gets clicks. And it's a cycle. I mean, the older generations feel validated in their frustration, and Gen Z just rolls their eyes at us. But here's what we're missing. While they're being painted as slackers, Gen Z is actually doing a lot of amazing things. And I mean, what's funny is they're probably working harder on those causes than we did when we were their age. So are we really going to ignore their accomplishments because their work doesn't look like our traditional 9-to-5 grind? It's a different type of productivity, but it is still productivity. So where does that leave us? Is Gen Z lazy? Well, I'd argue that the answer is probably no in general. I mean, they've just redefined what hard work looks like. And they're questioning the systems that we were kind of afraid to, or too busy, quite frankly, to question ourselves. I think the truth is they're not coasting through life. They're navigating this entirely different world than the one we grew up in. I mean, they figured out that maybe life isn't about working yourself into an early grave. And they're challenging the notion that success can only be found through endless sacrifice. So next time you hear someone call Gen Z lazy, think about this. Maybe they're not the problem. Maybe, just maybe, they're smarter than we give them credit for. But I mean, let's be honest. If we could have gotten away with doing half of what they're doing at their age, we would have done it too. So what do you think? Is Gen Z really lazy, or are they just rewriting the rule book? I mean, either way, it looks like they're the ones laughing all the way to the bank while we're still figuring out how to send memes and chat groups half the time. So Gen Z, this time, I salute you.